Hey everybody, welcome back. It's time to revise. We're going to be doing attachment, and it's going to be Schaffer's stages of attachment, yeah? So, there's going to be some questions. You can pause it, you can come back when you're ready, and I'll talk through. Let's do it. There they are, look. Lovely set of questions. You got marks, you got times. Give it a go. Here's your chance to pause, and then you can come back when you're ready, and we'll discuss. Go for it. Right, let's do it. So, first one, identify. My favourite command word. Let's do that, yeah? Don't explain, just name. So 3 stages. Now, the course textbooks do vary a little bit here. So there is, a little bit of scope on the mark scheme for some alternative terminology, but you can't just make it up, yeah? So you're looking for the asocial stage, the indiscriminate stage, the discriminate stage, and the multiple stage. Other language that sometimes is credited, because as I said, the books are slightly different, you might call it pre-attachment, you might call it the beginnings of attachment, you might call the discriminate phase the specific phase. Yeah, so there's a bit of variation there, but you're just naming them, okay? All right. Identify one stage and briefly outline that stage. Okay, so it's going to be a 1 + 1. So let's go for the asocial stage. Yeah, 1 mark. Briefly outline it. The asocial stage is where infants, in their first few weeks, show no preference for humans. Done. Outline one stage of attachment. Right, let's do a different one this time. Let's do the discriminate phase, yeah, the specific phase. Okay, so one stage of attachment is the discriminate phase, which occurs around, 5, 6, 7, 8 months old, that kind of window. And this is where the infant shows a clear preference for one particular person, that they've developed a primary attachment with that individual, and they will be likely to show separation anxiety when that person leaves them, and they'll be likely to show stranger anxiety when other people approach them. There you go, done. Right, distinguish between 2 stages. Okay, let's go for indiscriminate and discriminate. So the second and third stages. Distinguish means, explain the difference. And to do that, what you're going to do is tell the examiner very clearly what it is you are kind of comparing them on, or what is the difference, as opposed to just, define them both, yeah? For 4 marks, maybe look for kind of 2 points of difference, okay? So something like this. The indiscriminate phase, the second phase, occurs, around 2 or 3 months old, whereas the discriminate or specific phase, the third stage, occurs around kind of 7 or 8 months old. That would be 1 point of difference. Now we need another one. So try and get in there. I wouldn't use that if it was just 1 point of difference. That's just a second point, okay? Try and focus on kind of the behaviours that you'd see. So, furthermore, the indiscriminate phase would be where an infant shows a preference for humans, but no separation or stranger anxiety. Whereas, so, make it really clear that you're distinguishing them. Whereas, the specific or the discriminate phase is where a specific bond with one person is formed, and therefore they would show separation and stranger anxiety. Yeah. So I'm hopefully making it clear for the examiner there in that second point that the difference is that they've got a specific bond versus no specific bond, and they would show those anxieties, whereas they wouldn't show those anxieties. Yeah. All right, we've now got a scenario question. We've got Philip and Cindy, and their children, Rudolph and Peggy. No prizes for guessing where I got those names from. Okay, so Rudolph is a few weeks old. He's happy watching flashing lights. Peggy, a bit older, crawling around. We're checking back in. We're not very happy when someone new approaches. Okay, so what that's hopefully leading you towards is that they're in 2 different stages, and we could talk about things like, stranger anxiety, stuff like that, okay? So the question is, outline 2 stages of attachment, and we're going to have to apply those to those children, okay? So let's do it. One stage of attachment is the asocial or the pre-attachment phase. This occurs in the first few weeks of life and is where an infant shows no preference for humans. They will be equally happy with an inanimate object as they would a human. Okay, this is shown in the scenario via the behaviour of Rudolph. He's happy with a toy that's very interactive or flashing lights, whatever. It's engaging, and Philip even comments that if he's fed, warm and clean, he's fine. Yeah, he doesn't need an attachment figure or an emotional figure at that point. Yeah, he just needs someone to respond to his care. Okay, so that's one phase. A second phase is the where is she? She's a few months old. She's got strange anxiety. Okay, so a second phase is the specific or the discriminate phase of attachment. This is where, after several months, a child will have formed an attachment bond with their primary caregiver and therefore show separation and stranger anxiety. This is shown in the scenario via Peggy's behaviour, because she is happy to explore but has to come back every so often, which suggests maybe an element of separation anxiety. She proximity seeks, to use some of that terminology from the strange situation. And she also shows stranger anxiety because she doesn't like someone new approaching and trying to play with her. There you go, done. Okay, explain the strength of Schaffer's stage theory. So you want to kind of point, explain, conclude, or peel structure here, as always for a 3-mark evaluate question, and it is a strength. So what could we use? Maybe research support. Yeah, one strength of Schaffer's stage theory of attachment is research support. Schaffer and Emerson's classic study on the Glasgow families showed that as they kept going back every month, didn't they? Every 4 weeks and interviewing and observing. So as children aged, their attachment formed and strengthened with their primary caregiver. So by around 6 to 8 months old, children showed a clear preference for their primary caregiver, and they showed separation and stranger anxiety. This supports the stage theory because the stage theory says that those behaviours should appear around several months old, and that should develop as they get older, with multiple by around 10 to 12 months. Yeah, this reinforces the credibility, or this demonstrates that Schaffer stage theory is evidence-based. Yeah. Okay. Discuss a strength. So we're going to use what we just did, and we're going to flex this up a bit by introducing a counter-argument, because it's to discuss a strength, not just explain it. So just carrying on from where we were a second ago, despite this, critics would argue that the evidence base for this theory is flawed. Yeah, so there's the counter-argument. Let's explain that. For example, this evidence is based on self-report and observations, which is potentially undermined by the social desirability bias and risk of demand characteristics on the part of the mothers. Yeah, they think about it. They would be, you've got someone turn up with a clipboard going, we're just going to, look at attachment again, and we're looking at this, we're looking at that, and you're tempted to play up to look like a good parent there, aren't you? Yeah, that's only natural. Yeah. Okay, so back to our discussion. On balance, this lack of validity in the evidence base undermines the support there is for the stage theory. Yeah, there's that link at the end there. Okay, done. Right, referring to Rudolph and Peggy discussed the stage theory. So 16 marker with a stem. Yeah, we've already been through the knowledge really that applies for that 6 marker and the application. So we need to just build a little bit more in, because there's going to be, in a 16 mark stem, probably 6 AO1, 4 AO2, 6 AO3. So how are we going to bulk this out a bit? You need to talk about the other stages. Yeah? So we didn't, when we went through the Rudolph and Peggy stem, we talked about asocial or pre-attachment, and we linked that in. We talked about discriminate or specific, and we linked that into Peggy. That's fine. But we also need to now talk about the other 2 stages to bulk that knowledge out, okay? So make sure you talk about the indiscriminate phase. And you could even, I suppose, you might not have to, but you could even say, Rudolph is likely in the next week or 2, because he's already a few weeks old, to start showing a preference for humans. So he may not be happy just with toys, flashing lights, yeah? So mention that one. And then you've got to mention the multiple one as well, okay? And you could, again, I suppose, make a little bit of a link there. So Peggy's already several months old, so very soon she should be starting to show signs of, having a preference for another adult in her life, yeah, a secondary figure. So that's a knowledge and application done. For a 16-mark STEM, as I said, 6 AO3 marks, 6 evaluation marks, so 2 discussion points. We've already talked about research support, that Glasgow study, and maybe discuss that with a counter-argument. What else could you say? You could say that attachment varies culturally, and you could, if you've studied, you might be aware of examples like the Israeli kibbutzim, or other examples that you might have talked about when you've done Van Easendorn and his meta-analysis, where you could say, having a kind of single kind of primary bond is not reflective of how attachment works universally, and some cultures are more or less kind of into that, I suppose. So, we talked about, or you would have talked about when you did the Van Easendorn study, how traditionally Japanese parents don't really separate from their child. So, you might find a difference in stages there. You might talk about how in other cultures it's a more kind of shared responsibility, or, even use, research on tribes to show that a lot of that care is spread out and shared among members of the tribe. So, again, we're going to see different stages there. So it's a very kind of, I don't know, is Western the right word? But it's potentially a culture-biased theory, yeah? So that could be another discussion point. What we need to do to kind of move this into now a just straight 16 marker with no application is have another discussion paragraph instead of that application. Okay, so what you could do here is possibly bring in something like Bowlby's monotropic theory to kind of discuss, the role of that single bond versus multiple bonds. So you could talk about how, Schaffer and Emerson, or Schaffer in his stage theory, places emphasis on, that fourth phase where there's multiple attachments and how they're all important. Bowlby undermines this. Bowlby challenges this with his notion of monotropy and talks about how, those multiple ones are only really secondary, and it's more of kind of like a safety net for the child, yeah? But that primary bond is, far, far and away the most important element of, parenting and child development and attachment, yeah? So you could use Bowlby to kind of undermine how Schaffer has put that emphasis on, as I said, multiple attachment, yeah? Okay, other than that, you could kind of bulk up with a bit more research support or research against, or discussing how it's, as I said, kind of culture biased, or a lot of the evidence is culture biased. Remember that study was in Glasgow. As long as, whenever you're criticising a study, you are bringing it back and talking about, okay, well, the study's not that great, this is the impact on the theory, because that's what you're discussing, isn't it? It's the theory. Okay. Don't forget to reflect. What happened? Why did that happen? And so what? What's next? There we go. That's the end of that one. Hope that was useful for you. Do let me know if you've got any questions or comments down below. I'm sure I'll see you in another video. Keep going, yeah? Good luck. Bish bash bosh.